Bedtime Myths and Mysteries, where legends never sleep.
Welcome back to Bedtime Myths and Mysteries. Tonight, we're pulling Christmas out of the candlelit halls of Dickensian nostalgia and dragging it somewhere far louder, darker, and far more dangerous. Because Christmas was not invented by the Victorians. They polished it. The Tudors unleashed it. If you could step back into England 500 years ago, you wouldn't find a neat day of goodwill, neatly wrapped and over by Boxing Day. You would stumble into 12 long, riotous days of food, drink, music, masks, gambling, mock kings, and sanctioned chaos. A season where order was inverted, rules were bent, and the poor could laugh at the powerful without fear. For 12 days, England deliberately loosened its grip on discipline and let mischief sit on the throne. This is the story of the 12 days of Tudor Christmas. For the Tudors, Christmas did not begin on the 25th of December. That was merely the opening bell. Christmas began properly at sunset on Christmas Eve and rolled forward relentlessly until Twelfth Night, on the 5th or 6th of January. Work stopped, courts closed, schools shut, legal business paused. Even the harsh machinery of Tudor justice slowed, as if the kingdom itself agreed to look the other way. Homes were transformed. Evergreen boughs of holly, ivy, bay, and rosemary were dragged indoors, not just for decoration, but for protection. These plants were believed to ward off evil spirits during the darkest time of the year, when the boundary between the living and the unseen felt dangerously thin. The smell of greenery mixed with smoke, tallow, roasting meat, and spiced wine, creating an atmosphere that was half church, half pagan, forest, ritual. At the center of everything stood the hearth. Fires were kept burning day and night, not just for warmth, but because darkness itself was suspect. Fire was safety, fire was life, and fire was celebration. Food arrived in quantities that bordered on obscene. This was not a season of restraint. This was a season of excess as a form of survival. The Tudors believed that abundance now would carry them through the long winter ahead. Great joints of beef, mutton, and venison were roasted until fat hissed into the flames. Pies arrived sealed in thick pastry coffins, packed with meat, dried fruit, spices, and sometimes live birds baked beneath the crust, released dramatically when the lid was cut open. Mince pies were not sweet treats. They were heavy, spiced meat pies, filled with beef or mutton mixed with raisins, currants, sweet, cloves, cinnamon, nutmeg, and wine. Each ingredient was symbolic. The spices represented the gifts of the Magi. Eating them was, in a strange way, an act of devotion disguised as indulgence. Ale and wine flowed freely. Even children drank small beer, a weak brew safer than water. Drunkenness was not frowned upon. It was expected. Sobriety during Christmas was viewed with suspicion. What were you hiding? Music was everywhere. Carols were not polite background noise. They were loud, communal, and often rowdy. People sang in streets, taverns, churches, and private homes. Many carols mixed sacred themes with jokes, flirtation, and social satire. A good carol should make you laugh before it made you pray. But the true heart of Tudor Christmas was misrule. Every great household, from noble estates to royal courts, appointed a Lord of Misrule. This was not a metaphor. It was a real official role, often given to a servant, a fool, or a junior member of the household. For 12 days, this person became king in all but name. The Lord of Misrule organized games, dances, disguises, plays, drinking contests, and practical jokes. He issued mock laws. He fined people for refusing to sing or drink. He could command nobles to serve servants, reverse seating orders, and turn dignity into farce. Disobedience was punished with more drinking. This was not chaos for chaos's sake. It was controlled inversion. By allowing society to flip upside down temporarily, it released pressure. It reminded everyone that power was not sacred, that hierarchy was fragile, and that laughter was a weapon as sharp as any blade. Even Henry VIII, that terrifying monument to ego and excess, embraced misrule. At court, he dressed in disguises and played tricks on guests. He danced, gambled, and feasted with theatrical enthusiasm. The Tudor court, during Christmas, was a place of masks and performance, where no one was quite who they appeared to be. Gift-giving existed, but it was nothing like the modern frenzy. Gifts were exchanged on New Year's Day, not Christmas Day. They were often symbolic rather than extravagant. Gloves, pins, handkerchiefs, books, or coins. For the wealthy, gifts were a way to curry favor. For the poor, they were acts of mutual support. Refusing a gift was dangerous. Accepting it created obligation. Children were not the focus of Christmas. Adults were. This was not a sanitized holiday built around innocence. It was a deeply adult season, full of gambling, sexual humor, and barely concealed violence. Games often involved mock trials, public humiliation, or tests of endurance. Christmas was funny, but it was also sharp-edged. Religion loomed constantly in the background. And this is where Tudor Christmas becomes truly strange. The Tudor period was an age of violent religious upheaval. England swung between Catholicism and Protestantism with terrifying speed, depending on who wore the crown. Yet Christmas traditions stubbornly refused to die. Protestant reformers tried to suppress carols, feasting and saints' days, branding them pagan leftovers and Catholic excess. But people ignored them. You could change the church, you could change the prayers, but you could not take away Christmas. Ancient customs survived under new names. Yule logs burned as they always had. Massive pieces of wood dragged into the hearth and kept smoldering for days. The remains were saved to protect the home from lightning and fire in the year ahead. Wassailing continued, with groups roaming the countryside, singing for food and drink, blessing orchards and threatening mild destruction if refused. Mumming plays appeared in villages and towns, performed by masked amateurs reenacting absurd versions of ancient myths. A hero would die and be resurrected. A fool would outwit authority. Death itself would be mocked and reversed. These plays carried echoes of pre-Christian ritual, carefully disguised beneath Christian language. Twelfth Night was the climax of everything. This was the night when the Lord of Misrule reached his peak, and then was symbolically stripped of power. A bean or pea was hidden in a cake. Whoever found it became king or queen of the night, ruling the final feast. Drinking intensified. Dancing lasted until exhaustion. Masks were worn, identities blurred. And then, at midnight or dawn, it all ended. Greens were torn down, decorations burned. The world snapped back into order. The message was clear. Chaos had its place, and now it was done. After Twelfth Night, returning to normal life was not optional. To cling to Christmas beyond its appointed end was considered unlucky, even dangerous. Misrule could not linger. The rules had to return, or the balance of the world itself might tilt too far. When you strip away the nostalgia, Tudor Christmas reveals something powerful. It was not about quiet reflection or sentimental family moments. It was about survival, community, and controlled rebellion. It acknowledged darkness by meeting it with fire, noise, laughter, and shared excess. And perhaps that is why these traditions proved impossible to kill. The Victorians did not invent Christmas. They tamed it. They softened its edges and wrapped it in morality and childhood wonder. But beneath that polite surface, the Tudor spirit still flickers. Every office party, every ugly sweater, every night where rules bend just a little more than usual. That is misrule, echoing through time. So the next time someone tells you Christmas should be quiet, orderly and well-behaved, remember the Tudors. Remember the Lord of Misrule. Remember that for 12 wild days, England believed the world needed laughter more than obedience. And sometimes it still does. If you've enjoyed this journey into history's darker corners, you're in the right place. This is Bedtime Myths and Mysteries, where old traditions refuse to stay buried. Subscribe if you'd like more stories like this whispered to you in the long winter nights. Sleep well. And if you hear singing outside your door, it might be wassailers, or something older, still knocking, still hungry, still laughing in the dark.